What's up everybody, I'm HoopsandHipHop. So you all know, if you've kept up with my videos, that I like to talk a lot about the behind the scenes stuff of Pokemon. I really like looking into the what could have been side of the franchise and finding new things that could have presented a different look for Pokemon. With that said, I've noticed recently that there are a decent amount of Pokemon out there that look like they were supposed to be legendary at one point, but for whatever reason didn't end up that way. So in today's video, we're going to be looking at 7 Pokemon that almost became legendaries. With these Pokemon, there's either legitimate evidence that suggests they were possibly going to be a legendary at one point, or at the very least, there's a lot of room for speculation on that idea based on certain characteristics of the Pokemon. So why don't we go ahead and see what we can come up with on these hidden legendaries. Okay, so we're going to be kicking things off here with the Gen 5 Pokemon Volcarona, and if I had to bet on it, I would definitely put some money down that Volcarona was fully intended to be a legendary during the development of Pokemon Black and White at some point. Now I say this for a couple different reasons. Number one is because it's got all of the earmarks of a legendary Pokemon. The first and most notable thing is that it's an overworld Pokemon that you have to hunt out, and that it actually appears in the overworld when you encounter it, and you only get one chance to catch it in Black and White. On top of having the privilege of being an overworld Pokemon, Volcarona also is quite literally a legendary Pokemon in that it is the stuff of legends. Volcarona's Pokédex entries tell how it was both feared and revered in ancient times, as it was once a replacement for the sun during a time when volcanic ash blocked out the sun and caused a really harsh winter. Like I said, I fully believe that Volcarona was developed as a legendary Pokemon until Game Freak realized that they had way too many legendaries already on their hands in the Unova region. So Unova is already overcrowded with legendaries, and I think when Game Freak realized this, they decided to take Volcarona and essentially demote it from a legendary Pokemon to a non-legendary super powerful Pokemon, and they gave it a pre-evolution in Larvesta to ultimately solidify this. I think this actually makes a lot of sense in terms of explaining why Volcarona looks so much like a legendary, why you can find it in a legendary place, why its backstory is legendary, and really it's just a shame because Volcarona would have fit in really well as a legendary Pokemon. Next, we're going to go ahead and jump ahead one generation to Kalos and talk about Carbink. Now obviously Carbink has a very close relationship with Diancie, who is a legendary Pokemon in Pokemon X and Y. However, the way their relationship ultimately ended up in the final game is not the way I personally believe it was intended, or at least started out as, when they were starting the development of these Pokemon in the development of X and Y. Now with Carbink and Diancie's relationship and what it was originally intended to be, I feel like one of two things are possible. Number one is that Diancie was actually a regular Pokemon originally and just evolved from Carbink like a regular Pokemon, but as they designed it and as they kind of gave it its character and whatnot, they realized that this Pokemon actually had a lot of potential and looked really nice and kind of decided to upgrade it to a legendary Pokemon. But since they originally intended it as an evolution of Carbink and that design aspect and similarity was still there, they decided to keep that relationship there and not essentially just throw it away by saying that Diancie is a mutated Carbink rather than an evolution of Carbink. The other thing I think is possible is that Carbink and Diancie could have had a Manaphy-Phione sort of situation where they're closely related, they don't evolve into each other, but they definitely are both legendary. I could see this being a possibility as well, just because Carbink seems like it has a lot more going for it. It seems like kind of like a mysterious sort of Pokemon that kind of just has a lot more than meets the eye. At least that's the impression that I get from it. And so either way, whether Diancie was going to be a regular Pokemon or whether Carbink was going to be a legendary, Carbink was very, very, very close to legendary status in one way or another, and it kind of sucks for it that it ultimately just became a regular Pokemon. The next almost legendary Pokemon is gotta be everyone's favorite almost legendary and probably the most well known and talked about, and that would be Arcanine. Arcanine literally is known as the legendary Pokemon, that would be its species, and in the second episode of the anime, Arcanine is shown along with the 3 legendary birds and talked about briefly by Professor Oak as being a legendary Pokemon. So it definitely seems like Arcanine was supposed to be a legendary Pokemon at one point. The story goes that Arcanine was originally the fire type of the electric ice fire trio that is Moltres, Zapdos, and Articuno. However, the developers realized that it didn't really make sense to have one dog with 2 birds, and so they replaced Arcanine with Moltres instead. Now this really does make a lot of sense, however the thing that I personally think seals the deal on the fact that Arcanine was definitely a legendary Pokemon at one point is the fact that it's a dog, or rather a beast if you will. I personally feel really strongly that the idea of Arcanine being a legendary Pokemon was carried over into Johto, and that's why the legendary beasts are the legendary beasts, because they wanted to include that idea of having legendary dog-type creatures, or cats or beasts or whatever you want to call them. I know you guys are very passionate about that in the comments section. And I just think that's really, really cool because, as I've said, I just love looking into the development process of Game Freak and seeing these puzzle pieces kind of come together into what ultimately created the Pokemon world and generations that we know and love is just really, really fascinating. Speaking of Gen 2, why don't we keep the Johto flavor going here with a rather odd sort of Pokemon, Unknown. Now, Unknown is a real head-scratcher because obviously it does not have the stats that most legendary Pokemon have. However, for all intents and purposes, the way it operates in the Pokemon world, it is very much a legendary Pokemon. We see that it has a very close relationship with the legendary beasts both in the anime and the games, and for the love of heck, it's also got a very close relationship with Arceus of all things, the most legendary Pokemon of them all. Now, the thing that makes me think that Unknown could have been labeled as a legendary by the developers at one point is that there's just really no other Pokemon like it. We don't really see any other Pokemon out of the over 800 that are currently available to us that have an aura of mystery surrounding them like the Unknown do, have kind of the attention given to them in terms of the overarching legends and mythos of the Pokemon world, and that also have a close, direct relationship to the Pokemon that are considered legendary as well. And oh, by the way, did I mention, they also have their own dedicated area in Johto as well, and I don't remember the last time a single regular non-legendary Pokemon had that kind of special treatment. So even though there isn't really any evidence, I guess, that suggests, like some of the other picks on this list, that Unknown was a legendary, it definitely has everything it needs to be a legendary, and I just don't know why Game Freak would give that sort of status to a regular Pokemon, so it's kind of just something to think about. Well, I guess we're going to stick around in Johto for one more because this one is kind of one I wanted to touch on again after mentioning it in a previous video not too long ago, and that would actually be Snubbull. Now, this one is definitely purely speculative, so if you do not agree with me, don't get your jiffies in a bunch. Is that a phrase? Jiffies in a bunch? Don't get frustrated or mad with me if you don't agree, because that's perfectly fine, and this is just for fun. But in the recently leaked Gold and Silver beta demo that revealed all of those fancy new Pokemon that the internet freaked out about a month or so ago, there were some interesting things about Snubbull that kind of made you sit and think a little bit about it if you actually took the time to analyze it. First off, it was notable that Snubbull was one of the very last Pokemon in the Pokédex order, even after the legendaries. The second thing that was interesting is that it did not evolve in this demo, Granbull was not present, and the third thing that was interesting is that it was originally a Psychic type. Now, the thing that's very significant about the Psychic type, especially when it comes to Generation 2, is that Psychic was always seen in the earlier days of Pokemon as a legendary type, and this is actually why Lugia is Psychic type instead of Water type like everyone else thinks it should be. Now, really, when you take these things and kind of just put them together and just take them for what they're worth, it really kind of does paint a picture of, hey, maybe Snubbull was a bit more important in the original scope of Gold and Silver than it originally intended to be. Now, like I said, I'm not saying this is fact, I'm not even going to say it's a theory, it's just an idea to think about for your enjoyment. Now, finally moving away from Johto and going to Sinnoh, we've got a couple Gen 4 Pokemon to round out this video that have some very interesting things going on with them that makes me personally think they could have been legendary. The first one I'm going to talk about is Rotom, and while it's very clear now with the inclusion of the Rotom Dex in Sun and Moon that Rotom is not a legendary, that is not to say that Rotom wasn't at one point intended to be legendary, because essentially Rotom is the Volcarona of Gen 4. They have very much the same scenario. A, they both appear very late in the Pokedex amongst the rest of the legendary Pokemon. B, they are overworld Pokemon that have an area dedicated to them, which obviously regular Pokemon do not usually ever have. Number 3, in Diamond and Pearl, Rotom is a post-game Pokemon that you can only access after beating the game, much like a lot of other legendaries, and just like Volcarona. And finally, also similar to Volcarona, it could have been demoted as a legendary Pokemon because of the abundance of legendaries in the Sinnoh region. There's a lot of legendary stuff going on in the Sinnoh region, and I feel like Rotom definitely was a part of that at one point, but just kind of got ousted because of the oversaturation. If I had to bet on that, I would, just because Rotom literally has everything else going for it in terms of being a legendary, so if it was never even considered a legendary or thought of to be a legendary at one point at all, why would they give a regular Pokemon that special treatment? And finishing off this video, we've got another Sinnoh Pokemon that, while definitely a regular sort of Pokemon, has a lot of legendary aura, if you will, surrounding it, and that would be Lucario. First off, little known fact, it is thought that Lucario is partially based on Anubis, which is obviously the Egyptian god of the dead, which is a deity-like figure, and usually regular Pokemon aren't based on these deity-like figures most of the time, so that already gives Lucario a leg up in terms of regular Pokemon versus legendary Pokemon. It's also got its aura abilities, which is definitely a legendary Pokemon sort of thing to have, and it's also got that association with Mew in the Lucario and the Mystery of Mew movie, so over the years Lucario definitely has gotten a lot of special attention, much like a lot of legendary Pokemon do. For all we know, though, it very well could have possibly been the case that Lucario was designed as an earlier legendary, but once the themes of time, space, reality, mythos, all of that stuff began to take shape for Generation 4, they decided to go a different direction with the creation trio that we now see in the final games. It's impossible to know, but as we have learned in recent months with the Gold and Silver demo leak and all of these concept beta Pokemon leaked by Game Freak themselves, anything is a possibility, so who knows, maybe Lucario was a legendary at some point. So there we have it, everybody. Now, like I said, this video involved a little bit of theorizing, a little bit of speculation, but overall a lot of interesting circumstances behind these Pokemon, which are always fun to take a look at to see what you can find. If you guys enjoyed the video, though, be sure to give it a like because it really helps out, and let me know down in the comments below what you think of these ideas, if you have any other ideas to contribute about these Pokemon, or if there's another Pokemon out there that you think could have possibly been legendary at one point. Definitely mention it below and let us know what you think about that. As always, if you're new to the channel, be sure to hit that subscribe button because I upload content that you would probably enjoy if you're watching this video, and if you'd like to support the channel further, be sure to check out my Patreon. It's only $1 a month and you get some amazing perks, and it directly helps me make videos like this and make remixes and just helps me out a lot, and I would really appreciate any support you guys can give me on that. Anyways, though, with all that being said, you guys know the drill. I'll be back Thursday with another video, so until then, as always, I will smell you guys later.